Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about the fact that Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is unlike, I would say, most other versions of Dungeons & Dragons, is absolutely not edgy. It is 100% non-edgy. And I think Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is the first edition of the game that is fully, shed every scale of edginess. All right, so let's talk about why we're talking about this today. So I'm a big fan of Ingrid Bernal. He also goes by the name Hankrin Farinal. He is the creator of Index Card RPG, and he is an absolute intellectual titan when it comes to tabletop role-playing games. I think if you're I'm a huge fan of Index Card RPG. I know a lot of people aren't. I know that so basically, if you're a fan of Ingrid Bernal today, it's like being a fan of Van Gogh before he died, right? Like, when you listen to this dude, he's just got, this brilliant energy. He just doesn't do anything like anyone else. He is working full-time on tabletop role-playing game projects. He's just absolutely brilliant, and, he's an intellectual titan within the tabletop role-playing game community, but he is really niche, right? I know most people don't even know what Index Card RPG. I get that, right? All right, but he said something recently that I thought was just spot on and absolutely brilliant, right? So what did he say? He said the following. He said, Dungeons and Dragons is like skateboarding. You do it with your friends, there should be beer, and you should get away with it. And I was like, wow, that is an epic description of Dungeons and Dragons, right? Right? And I disagree with him in one area. So one, I'm a huge skateboard fan. I skateboarded when I was a kid, and I did some nutso bonker things that I pray every day thank God none of my children skateboard, because I'm like, oh man, wow, I took a lot of risk when I was young, right? In the name of skateboarding, I lost a lot of skin, right? And and I wasn't even anywhere near the most dangerous of the hooligans within my sphere, right? I saw some nutso things within, I skateboarded between when I was 10, and I stopped, I would say, when I was about 28, right? And there's a lot of risk. There's a lot of risk in skateboarding, right? Yeah, there's a lot of risk in skateboarding. All right, so I totally get what he's saying. So I would agree when it comes to Dungeons & Dragons. I would say you should be with your friends, or it's cool to be with your friends. It should happen with your friends. There should be risk, right? I wouldn't add the beer part. I'm a teetotaler, right? I don't think you don't need beer to enjoy D&D. I don't think you need beer to enjoy anything, frankly. I think almost everything's better without beer, but that's a whole other thing. So you should have risk, and you should get away with it. I love that idea, and he's 100% right. Boy, oh boy, is he right? And now, where is this coming from? Because he knows what it was like in the 80s and 90s. When you were playing in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, boy, did you get away with playing D&D, right? First of all, there were there was literally an organization called Moms Against Dungeons & Dragons. It was a thing, right? There were moms coming at you. There were churches coming at you. There were parents coming at you. You had to clutch your books and hold them tight, right? It was edgy as all get out. Not only did you have churches coming at you, religious people coming at you, and there was even law enforcement. Law enforcement got in the mix in the 70s and 80s. It was hecka edgy. You were getting away with playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? And there was still a little bit of this in the 90s, right? So what happened, right? So you get all this. You got the 70s, 80s, and very, very risky. Oh, and Pete, no, if you dodged the religious people who were trying to get up all in your grill because you're playing D&D, and you dodged the moms who were mad against Moms Against Dungeons and Dragons, right? And you dodged people who were just concerned about these what they consider dangerous aspects of the game. The cool kids were after you too, right? You're oh, are you playing that nerd crap? And they didn't use the word crap. knock your, your PHB or MM and your DMG on the ground and say, laugh at you, right? And all the, thin, like shiny, the thin symmetrical, people were like, just didn't play, right? It was a thing, right? Like, you got away with it. You truly got away with playing in Dungeons & Dragons. Boy, has that changed. Holy cows. Look at Matt Mercer and his crew of literally Hollywood attractive people, right? Like, so one, ain't no nerds playing D&D anymore, right? Like, and nerd doesn't even mean anything anymore. Everybody's like much more inclusive. There isn't this popular, non-popular divide. Everybody has their own little niche form of popularity, and like the world has changed so fundamentally, right? And then, boy, you go on Twitter, you can't spin around and throw a metaphorical rock without hitting some teacher saying, I run Dungeons and Dragons for my elementary school. Like, and you're like, that is a noble, wonderful deed. That is just so charming and delightful. Because you remember when it was edgy, when you got away with it. It is so mainstream now, right? And thank goodness it is, right? I am all for this new world. I'm all for the fact that everybody can play D&D without being chased by churches. And I'm all for the fact that, you don't have to be a nerd anymore to play D&D. Nobody's going to knock your DMG, PHB, and MM out of your hands. You're not going to get mocked for playing. Your parents are unlikely to stop you nowadays. I think most parents would be thrilled to hear that you're going to read 750 pages of content to play a game every day, every weekend, right? And so many parents are like super pro D&D now. But tell me if I'm wrong, if there ain't just a tiny sliver, a small bitter lament for the days when we got away with it, right? When the game was hecka dark and edgy. Right? I think some of us miss it, right? And I think even some of the young people are like, ooh, that does sound cool. Things have changed, man. And God bless everybody, the community that has built this new world. But there's a small bitter lament for what we had. That's my opinion. What do you think? Do you think there's no reason for even that small bitter lament? Or do you feel it too? I'd love to hear what you think. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing. And have a wonderful millennium.